Hotkey G. G. Methodology of working with the tool. Click, drag, leave. It once more. Click, drag, leave. From the point of click till the point of drag will be the whatever. Click, drag and leave. This is the methodology to work with your gradient tool. The click will be the initial point of your mixing zone. Drag is the range where the color will be mixed, and leave is the final place. From that point onwards, no color mixing. Before the click, after the leave, only the solids. Only the draggable area is the mixable area. Does it clear? Before the click, after the leave will be always solid. Only the draggable area is the mixable area. Is it okay? So gradient mix the color only in the draggable zone. The lesser the drag, the lesser the mix. The higher the drag, higher the mix area. Is it okay? Point clear? Next, shift and drag always make a vertical or horizontal gradient. Shift and drag always makes a horizontal and vertical gradient, or the 45. Now without shift, you can able to set your own gradient angle. Point finish. The next point. Default gradient color is always the FG and BG color. FG BG color will be the default gradient color. By default, you will find that color in your screen. Which is the default gradient color? This will be the question, and the answer is BG and FG color. If you need the gradients should be red and blue, then make your BG to be red, and like FG to be red and blue to the BG. And now you'll find the next color on your screen. So how to change the gradient color? Question finished. And the answer, change the color of FG and BG. Does it okay? Now the next. What are the different property, or like what are the different gradient available in Photoshop? And the answer, and where it is. Give a right click and find the gradient. Go for OK, find the gradient. Now find where is the other gradient. On the right click or in the control palette. Find the gradient, go for OK. Now we have seen how to paint the gradient on the screen. Does it clear? Next, how to change the gradient color. What is the question? How to change the gradient color? The color can be changed in two different manners. One, by loading the gradient, give a right click, go for the right top corner, you will find a drop down box, go for load gradient, and you can also load the gradient if you have saved already in the hard disk. Then you can also find the gradient over here. This is one of the method. First method, finish. The second method, to change the gradient. Yeah. Right click onto the screen, go to the drop down box on the right top corner, have a click over here, you will find a drop down box and go for the option called load gradient. The time you go for load gradient, it will put you into a hard disk, where if you have some downloaded gradient, then you can have to load it up. This is one of the method to go for load gradient to change the gradient color. Now the next method is using the library. Exactly below to your load gradient, you do find the next one, library. They are all like predefined gradients. You can have a click, then you'll find a pop-up box which speaks about OK and append. What is OK? What is append? OK means it will replace this and it will put that. If you go for append, along with that already existed gradient, you will find the new gradient. Now you find how to load the library gradient. OK and append. Fine. Now got to know how to find the new gradient. The two method is done up. Now the third method, how to make your customized gradient. That if you need your own gradient, how to do that. Question finished, and the answer is here onto your screen in the control palette. Just have a click, you'll find a very big window, gradient editor. This is the place where you can able to make your own gradient. Before going to the own gradient, let me talk about how many styles of gradient are there. What is the question now? How many styles of gradient are there? Question finished. Answer. There are 5 types of gradients. By default, the first gradient is linear, then radial, then angle gradient, reflected gradient, and diamond gradient. How many types of gradients? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Is it okay? By default, linear gradient. What is linear gradient? Mixing of two or more than two color in a line wise. Line ka mix hota. Then it is called linear gradient. Does it clear? It makes the color in a line wise. That's why it is called linear gradient. Whenever the same color is mixed in a circular wise, then it is called a radial gradient. In a circular way, it will mix the color. And the third one, angular gradient. And the fourth, a reflective gradient. Now it is a beautiful gradient. From the center of the draggable zone, the upper and lower will be the same. That's why it is called a reflective gradient. From where you are getting dragged down, exactly above to that much of gradient will be exactly reflected. That's why it is called a reflected gradient. Is it okay? Now the final one is a diamond shape. So the name is diamond gradient. Is it okay? Now got to know 5 different styles of gradient in Photoshop. Linear, radial, angular, reflective, and diamond. Okay, fine. You got to know these many ways are there where you can also mix the color to form the gradient on the screen. So coming to the next part, how to customize the color of the gradient. Just have a click on the gradient option inside the control palette. You will find a gradient editor. Now this editor speaks about a lot. So let's go into the lowest slider. The slider is equipped with few buttons. Can you able to see? These buttons are technically called as the lower one called, technically these buttons are called stops, and the lower one is called color stops, and the upper one is called opacity stops. Lower one controls the color, the upper one controls in the transparency of the color. Now starting to the lower one. By default, gradient have the 2 stops. If you need your own, they can able to edit up by moving your cursor below to the slider, finding a direction like hand mark, and click over there, click over there, click over there, click over there. This is how you can able to add the color stops. Once the color stop is add up, then the next scenario, how to change the color inside the color stop. Is it okay? The color stop can be changed in 3 methods to change the color. The number 1, the time you switch on a color stop, the color will be getting pop up over here. Change the color by a single click. Job is done. First method done. How to change the color of a color stops? And the answer, select the color stop. You'll find the color box over here. Click over there, find the color and get it changed. either through the picker or through the library. In whichever way you want to pick the color, you can pick it up. Go for OK, job is done. First method is done to choose a color inside the gradient editor. The second method, the time you click on the color stops and you are moving your cursor to the canvas, you will find it will show you a picker mark, eyedropper. You can pick the color from the screen also. The next method is done. You can pick the color from the screen. Second method done. And now the third method, how to pick the color. So now I got to know you can also pick the color from color picker, from the canvas, and from the gradient slider. This is a slider. From this slider also you can also pick the color. Now can you see you are picking the color from this slider. From this slider, from the color picker, from the canvas, and by the click over here you will find 2-3 options like background color also you can also take directly. Now you have seen like this many methods are there to choose a particular color in the color gradient. Is it okay? Fine. If you don't need the colors, then you can have to get it drag out, drag out, drag out. How to delete the color stops? Finished. How to add the color stops? Done. How to change the colors? Done. Now how to change the position? Done. You can have to set the position of one color to earlier or far away. Is it okay? Now the next. Once the color is put into a position, and the next part is how to control the center point of a color. The two colors are there and you can able to control the center point. This is the center point in between the two colors. Either you can able to make one color to be dominant or one color to be recessive inside the gradient. So how much the coverage, that also could be controlled. Now the next, what you got to know now? How to control the center point of the two gradient. By default it will be in 50%, you can able to go for 10% or you can go for 90%. Now the next, 50. Next, coming to the upper side, it is the opacity slider. If you don't need to see the color, then get the opacity to down. Next, before going to the opacity more, one point I left over. How to make a strip gradient. Strip means what? You can bring this exactly very close. Can you see? So now the gradient is there, but it doesn't allow to go for a mixable zone because your gradient very close. Is it okay? Now let us see how to make a tricolor gradient. How to make a tricolor gradient. So let the color starts with this green, in the middle white, and the end the saffron. But if I need the colors to be very strip, then make this color to be get duplicate. How to duplicate the gradient color? Question finished. Answer. Alt and drag. Alt and drag is a command which duplicates the color stops. Now bring the gradient very close and bring the color very close. Get the job. Okay. Find the tricolor gradient. So easy. Now I got to know how to make a tricolor gradient. It could be circular, it could be linear. It is not a circles, it is a gradient. So the advantage of gradient, you can make the strips to be smaller or you can make the strip to be bigger, and you can put the colors in angular in whichever the angle you want. So if it is done in a strip, then every time you need to change the angle, but now you just drag and the angle get changed. Getting? Now the next, how to make a transparent gradient. What is the question? How to make a transparent gradient. if I made this and if I need to apply over to an image and I need to see the image as well as the gradient together, then how to do it? Now if you put it up, everything is closed. If I need this center should be transparent, after this it should be transparent. Then how to make a transparent gradient? Come over here, as if like this is controlling the transparency. Same Alt could be work out, get the transparency and get this transparency, get it closer, go for OK, drag it up, find the transparency gradient, done. So how to make a gradient transparent? And you can also apply multiple gradient at the same time. Now we have seen like how to make the gradient to go for a transparency gradient, strippy gradient. Now if you have taken this much of time to make the gradient, how to save the gradient? There is a simple button over here. Just go for new, find the gradient, come over here and go for the option called save. Desktop, pixel art, and the gradient is saved. Now if you need to load the gradient, or you can also transfer this gradient on the net for the others, and they can also load the gradient. Load gradient onto the desktop, pixel art gradient, load it up. Now find the same gradient once more over here. Now what you got to know? How to create a gradient, how to save the gradient, how to load the gradient. Is it okay? Fine. So we have seen like how to make a transparent gradient, how to make a linear gradient, how to make a strip gradient. Let us learn how to make the other way of gradient, the next version. By default you will find the gradient type inside the gradient editor with two types, one solid, another noise. Gradient editor equipped with two type of gradient. What are those? Solid and noise. By default it is solid, but you can switch to noise. The time you go for noise, you always create a very strippy gradient. It doesn't have an option called opacity, color, like color stops, but it does have colors and it does have opacity. In the other way, add transparency, randomize it. So every time you create a random gradient, and you can also create a strip gradient by raising the roughness. Now check the gradient. So this is another way to form the gradient. Fine. So you have seen the gradient is with line format. So how to form the gradient, and that to be a noise gradient. Now I got to know what is called noise gradient and how it is differ from solid gradient. Solid gradient always is smooth, and noise gradient always give a strip. Yes, the roughness can be controlled, and the transparency is here. You cannot able to control the position of the colors. It is randomly set up. Noise gradient always create the color arrangement randomly. Now which color has to be there inside the noise gradient will be decided by HSB. If I need only red and yellow gradient, block the things to red and yellow, and you will find the gradient with only red and yellow. Now check to the screen, we do find only the gradient with red and yellow mark. Very thin lines can be produced in this manner. What is the gradient name? Noise gradient, and it is a part of your gradient editor. By default it is solid, but you can also switch to noise gradient, making different steps, getting pattern designs. Right, to make this design it takes a lot of time, but instantly you made the gradient pattern. Now you can also switch to a pattern, select it up, go for editor, define pattern, job is okay. Now take the canvas of your choice and fill it up with the pattern. So instantly you can able to make number of gradient pattern. Fine. Coming over here, yes. Take a new canvas, go for the gradient, drag it horizontal with the button shift, drag it vertical with the command shift. Once the pattern is done, choose the rectangular marquee tool, drag it up and make the edit pattern. Once the pattern is done, 1 minute, go for OK. Take the new canvas and fill it up with your new created pattern. Done. So now got to know how to make a new gradient. 1 minute. Fine. So you can see n number of gradient can be created in this manner. Fine. So that's make you to end the gradient. Okay. Hello. Battery off. Battery off. Fine. Now the next. How to make the gradient to play with the modes. As if like you have understood brush modes, right? So you can blend the gradient with the modes now. And number of, like you have seen, like 26 modes are there, and you can blend the gradient in different color modes. Let me take a very fresh document on the screen and a linear gradient, and let's start up fusing the gradient with different color modes. One, okay, on the screen white is there, over to the white, it always makes less the format. Now go for the screen and drag it up. Go for drag and you find the gradient mix up here. Next, the next color dash, you find different bright color onto the screen. So I'm just fusing the same gradient with the same gradient with different color mode, and the reaction is different onto the screen. So let me show you some of the screen. So manual gradient is applied somewhere. I'll sum up my image. I will show you some of my work, so you can get some idea how the gradient has been fused over here. So this is done in Photoshop, same brush. This is the brush what I have used to make this artwork. But we are mixing, we are creating the gradient with the brushes. So it is not always like you need to use only the gradient by the gradient tool, but you can have to create the gradient through the brushwork, fusing the colors with the colors in a systematic order by the tool or a systematic order by the help of your brush. So this is the artwork which I have done through this brush merging, and we are trying to create that gradient format with brush merge. And this dragging could be done with your mouse, but it takes some time. But if you are using tablet, it will be a little easier and faster to get the things to be done up. Fine. And the next one, so it's a fuse of the same artwork from the symmetrical format, but in fact the blending of the colors is done through brush work also. My goal of showing over here is like gradient is not only to be done with your tools, but it could be created manually also, and with the help of your smudge you can do it up. Fine. So get the line art first, then start up dragging up with the smudge to blend together to form it up. So, and use some brushworks and get the things to be done up. So let me show you what we have done. Right. So have a free hand movement. Fine. So just so try to make a circles every time, and you can also fuse them together to form the artwork. Fine. So a rough layout is there on the screen. Fuse them. Next. So it's a single layer. Now the few strokes on the screen are to punch up with a bright color. I've changed the color mode so that I can have to fuse and find the structure well. So default color and the brush, go to the exchange mode and get the things to be done now. So the pressure is working on the back end to have a light stroke and the deeper strokes. So no need to make a deep lines, just have some simple stroke lines and get them fused to do the artwork. Now once the structure is done, the skeleton is okay for, then start up taking the color and smudge. So use the F6 palette or the swatch palette and find out your favorite colors to stand over here and start fusing them. So now you do have options to get it smudged. I'm working in a single layer, but you can have to work with multi-layer also. Now the smudge and pick the color. Now giving out the feather with the colors. So I'm just start up smudging it to make the color to come up on your skin, and start up blending it together to your fine. Next, choose the next color, get it big. Now drag big lines. So no need to get fear because you got your baseline, and start up dragging down to give the depth on your skin. Fine. Pick the next color, what you choose, like to fuse the things over here, just a few drops and drop more, so that the upper one will give you a baseline and the rest follows the next. The strength from the 50% to 80% and drag it down. Sometimes you can able to get a free hand drawing. So I'm just fusing the colors now with one color to the next. So get the brush out and put some strokes and start up fusing. So my goal of showing over here is like you can able to do a lot of freehand drawings if you start up fusing the colors. And gradient is always a solid monotonous, but smudge is a very powerful tool which can throw the things to go for a next design level. And fuse them. Now I'm just burning the color to the next level. Okay, fine. Now drag it up from the upside down. Yes, auto merge, auto color contrast, auto is there. Automatically it will take up. There's like auto color contrast, which make the things to work faster to get the color correction to its nearby relative colors. It will take up. And get this merge once more and drag it up. Drag. Fine. So digital painting will take this format to go for work. So start up merging your things, and then sometimes you can get the beauty inside it. So take some reference and get it tracked. So if you are doing pencil art, then you can able to do all these things. Only sometimes you need to have these weapons with you, and the digital pen is to be used up. If you want to be into this field into a big way, start up holding this pen, because that will save your time, because it is not possible with your mouse in such freedom way. You can do it up, but it takes a lot of time. Now, once you have done to this level, then you can able to open the channels. Now look to the screen. What is the next action could be done up? So start up fusing the things in channels. Like channel is a very beautiful place where you can able to fuse the colors. Now come over here, go to these things. If you need to have a blue tint on the screen, then just take the white color, go for accents, and start up fusing the things. Go for X. What I'm doing, like I'm taking white color, I'm into the blue channel, and I'm taking the smudge tool and getting the brush size bigger and just dropping one single hit. So to find the color drop over here, and slowly I'm entering to the next red plus green. Like I need to have a magenta tint over here, then start up fusing the bright light onto the top. So the color is coming because of the smudge in the channels with red and blue mixed together to form it up. So a little more bright, yes. So the lights and color are coming not because of the colors directly you are putting, you are just playing with the channels to form the artwork. So you can throw the lights and colors onto the screen in this way also. Now fusing the things. So it is done in simple layer, in a single layer, and you can throw the lights from the edge going through the channels directly by the white color and painting with the brush, or else taking the smudge to get it smudge up. Just a simple click on the screen with making the color dynamics off and get it fused with the things. Fine. So just few light thrown here and there. Right. So throwing the things on screen randomly, get the artwork. Next, take a brush and start up putting some lines to give the detailness on any particular single channel. Drag it up. So it will fuse up with your color dynamics on, like brush dynamic on. So a simple lines and give the texture into it. I'm just brushing the things in a random way. So a lot of color are there hidden in the channels. Start playing with the channel, you'll find a very bright color inside it. So normal colors and the channel color is quite different. It's okay. So my goal of showing over here is like gradient is also a format to mix the color, and this is also a format to mix the color. And you can blend the colors inside the channels, and this is a very powerful tool. All television channels and all are working inside these channels to produce their bright color onto the screen. It's okay. That's it. Like I can able to make some part as a pattern and get that to be play on the screen. There, fine. Pattern. So the same pattern I've thrown over here and done. Plus smudge. Right. So you produce the color in a different way. Fine. That's all. I've introduced the gradient tool in a different manner here, like fuse the other tools also to produce the colors. Fine then, that's with your gradient, but start up doing some output with fusing the gradient to the circles, drag, over gradient and change the mode. Okay. Take a new layer, make the size down. What I'm trying is like creating different angles of the same gradient to make the depth on your screen. You can fuse the gradient with a different color angle, and it will make the gradient to look a little depth. Just the same gradient but in different angle. And the next, get it place, go over here, make the gradient, take a new layer, go for the gradient, fuse it up, gradient tool, and next find this is the layer and get the layer to be placed. Control J, Control T, get it over here, place it up, and just I am making the layer to get duplicate and merge together to form this artwork. Fine. So my goal is to show like gradient makes depth. Start up throwing the gradient nearby a little variations, you'll find the depth on your screen. It's okay. Fine. Fine. So it blends together to form the artwork. Next, till now what are the things you are learning, and that is okay from the front end, but what is the difficulty in it? Let us see. So what is the limitation of the gradient? Am I right? So the limitation of the gradient is your next learning. Once you apply a gradient, you cannot able to change it. First limitation of the gradient. Am I right? Oxymer gradient, like if you apply the gradient, you cannot able to change. Next, once you set the angle, you cannot able to change the angle. Once you put the gradient, you cannot able to change the color. Next, if you want to apply the gradient in a particular part, we sometimes feel struggle to put the gradient in a particular part of the screen, and it is applying to the whole screen. So these three are the limitation of the gradient. To get rid of this problem, they come up with a solution, and the solution is the gradient layer. Layer, new fill, gradient. As a profession, as a professional, try to use gradient layer rather than gradient tool. So gradient tool is having 3-4 limitations, and that limitation I have shown you. What are the limitation? Once applied the color, you cannot change. Once applied the angle, you cannot able to change, and you cannot able to apply the gradient on a limited part of your screen. And to get rid of this, they come up with a solution called gradient layer. Once you are working with a gradient layer, at any instant of time, you can able to deactivate it, activate it, and you can able to change the angle, and you can able to change the position. You can change the position, and you can able to change the color, and that to be in a fraction of second. Now what you are doing, you are playing with the gradient, but not in a direct gradient tool, but with the gradient layer. And the advantage of gradient layer, it applied to multiple layers below to it, and there is a mask over here where you can have to again put another gradient to control this gradient. Again you can have to apply a gradient over to the gradient to control this gradient. Can you able to see on your screen? I started doing the next level of your exercise, how to control the gradient by a gradient. This is the gradient, and this is the controller of the gradient, and the two gradient working together to form this artwork. So this is a VC which is applied by a gradient, and instantly if you need to change the color, yes, you can have to pick the color from your screen to have the impact on your screen. So let us work on a plain background, so you can have to understand it in a better way. So take the gradient layer either from the layer menu or from the here gradient layer, and go for OK with a particular color. Let us take a random color. Fine. And this is the place which is there to control this gradient, what is to be get visible on the screen. So come over here and start up drawing the things. So I just started making a drawing, and let the drawing to be filled with white color, and the reverse side of the gradient drawing should be filled with your black color. Select inverse and fill the black. Now can you find what happens on your screen? Limited part of the gradient is visible now, and the next is this. It is the controller of this gradient. So it is to the next level. If it is not understandable, no need to get panic, but this is the place where you can able to make the magic, right? Now if you need to have a glow on the screen, so let me take the backdrop to black. Fine. If you need to have a glow, take the brush and make the brush to go for hardness 0, increase the size, just have a click by making the set dynamics off. Now you find the next level of your glow onto the screen, and the same gradient, but you are making the artwork by black and white, and rest of the things are the arrangement. Get the brush to be hard and get it down to a single click. Now you find the artwork within 2 clicks of your gradient by controlling into the mask level, and suddenly you feel like it is the place. Instead of red, yellow, instead of green, yellow should be there. Now come over here and check to the screen, just have a click. What is the requirement? Instead of green, yellow should be there. Yes, place the yellow exactly wherever you like. Now you can able to control the gradient onto the screen by the slider even after doing the artwork. Is it fine? Now I feel like it is not the linear gradient, I need to have a radial gradient. Just have a click, find the linear to go for radial. Fine. And you feel like exactly in the center it should be there. Yes, you can able to find the gradient in the center. Fine. So how to make the artwork to get changed, and it is the flexibility if you are working with your gradient in the layer format. Now the next, if you need to make the scaling to go for, yes, you find the scale happen on the screen. And if suddenly you feel like here in the center in the red, that should be a yellow color button. Come over here, find this red, and inside the red here yellow should be there. Find it up and get it placed. Now you find the gradient is producing a yellow on the middle of your things. Now if you feel like it should be a solid yellow over to here, and after that the rays should be come up, then come over here, get the gradient, find it over here, and the solid should be here till this, and it should start suddenly the red. Now the glow starts very next to it. Is it okay? Find how to produce the glow to go for. Now this is the position what I am not looking for. The position should be a little top. Yes, you can have to move it up by your hand, because this is what the flexibility of a gradient layer is. Okay. Now we have seen like how you can able to play with your gradient, directly drag and drop, and now playing with your gradient layers to get the things to be done up. And it is transparent, you can able to place anything on the back side so that it will fit over there. Fine. For the day we have understood what is gradient, what is digital art, how to produce color mixing, and how to make the gradient to save for the further use. Fine. In the next class we will go for the vital tool like pen tool and text tool.